Today there were 6 presentations by the industries which could, largely the service industries today. The export industry made a presentation. You had a presentation by telecom, by banking, insurance and sectors like them. Now, most of them had sought single point registrations, and we also had IT industry make a presentation, and collectively today the 6 industries put together represented close to around 40% of the potential GST to be collected. So it's a very large segment we met. We want to get a hang of the experience of the users, how their expectations are and all that. Based on that, there have been some discussions in the GST Council whether we need to allow those kinds of flexibilities. So that's the first part. The second part, we went back to the IGST discussion. IGST as in the integrated GST, and also some of the pending issues left unresolved, especially the compensation law got discussed. And the key thing right now is revolving around the cross-empowerment, relating to how the taxes get collected, how the workload gets shared between the central and the state governments, relating to the horizontal versus the vertical model. Tomorrow we hope that we resolve that issue. It's really a question of centre really taking a step forward. States have taken quite a few steps forward, and we hope that the centre will match our own reaching out. If it does happen tomorrow, we could have some closure as far as this.
And is there a new proposal that the centre has tabled? If you look at it, that there would be 1.5 crore threshold, or because the states are adamant that there should be the 1.5 crore threshold limit where the states would exclusively control the assessees. So is there any new proposal from the centre?
It's not a question of controlling the assessees. I'd like to correct some parts of your understanding. See, the states have been firm on a model where 1.5 crores is the cutoff. Assessees below 1.5 crores turnover gets handled by the state governments exclusively. Above that, what has been suggested is a cross-empowerment model where 50-50 we share the audit processes. Okay, as you know, GST is not like a regular tax. It's a highly technology-intensive tax where you don't have to go there to pay the money. It has to be done by the computer, and it has to be paid into a portal, GSTN. Now, in this model, what becomes critical is the percentage of audit that you end up handling. If there is a 5% audit, which classically happens, okay, who will handle how much is the one discussion. Okay, we all understand that there are certain section of the assessees which need to be co-held by both the centre and the state. It's a question of what percentage we wish to share it in, and what is the threshold above which you have the cross empowerment. Centre is also accepting up to 20 lakhs, for instance. You don't have to pay tax, and up to 50 lakhs you have a model where you pay a declared kind of a tax. Okay, so compounding, and above that 50 lakhs to 1.5 crores is where the discussion revolves under. Somewhere I think if the central government gets in touch with the reality that there are 87,000 people who collect money, taxes in the central government, and there are 310,000 people who collect that from the state government point of view, and out of the 12 taxes which get subsumed into GST, the most complex tax, which is a VAT, which is the closest equivalent of GST, it has input tax credit and everything, that expertise is completely lying with the state government. So in my view, it's the central government which need to take a practical look at this whole thing, and if they do it, it can get closed tomorrow, which unless it gets closed tomorrow, you're not likely to see the April launch of GST.
Okay. And so the states have also pointed out that the compensation fund, compensation amount that was set up at 55,000 crores will have to be relooked at post demonetization, and there'll be more sources of fund that the centre will have to tap now. So what will that revised amount likely be, and what will be the other sources of compensation?
See, the compensation mechanism has been devised using the cess methodology on sin goods and the luxury goods, and also the green cess. Okay, these are the three components which go into the compensation fund. There is an agreement that there are likely to be 8 or 9 states which are the manufacturing and exporting states which will have to be compensated for the next 5-year period. And there's an estimate which initially got made somewhere between 45,000 to 48,000 crores is what this compensation is likely to be. But now with the demonetization, slowdown and whatnot, which centre believes will be only temporary, some of the states believe that it could lead to a little long-term impairment of revenue. If there is a longer-term impairment of revenue, then the compensation is likely to be higher. Okay, so that's the speculation based on which
amount likely to be the compensation?
no one has a view, okay, as far as that is concerned, because there's a deep divide between what central government thinks and some of the state governments think will be the impact of demonetization, because central government believe that it will only be there for some time. By the end of this year, they believe that the positives of demonetization will kick in, so the revenues will start rising again. Many of the states also believe so. But there are some states who believe that this demonetization is a disaster, and to that extent, the revenue loss is likely to be sustained for a longer period, which would mean the compensation they are talking about even 1 lakh crores and things like that. So there's really no basis. There are two differing perceptions. All that we've done in the compensation law is that the compensation fund will be funded not only by the cess, but by any other revenue that the GST Council decides to move in. It could be a loan taken from a multilateral institution, but they specifically said no drawal from the Consolidated Fund of India.
And
so that's the
what will
commitment.
be the additional sources that the centre will have to tap?
We've not gone into a great deal of details because right now it is an enabling legislation, and in this legislation we don't want to keep things which will constrain us to work within a certain boundary. While that's the reason we've introduced this clause called any other revenue as the GST Council may deem fit, which allows us to move forward and do the discussion further. So in my view, I think a constitutional commitment that the central government has to compensate the manufacturing states stays firm. We have enabled a legal path by which this can be achieved. So I don't think that issue is going to be reopened now. The only issue which is on which the entire GST implementation is hinging on is the cross empowerment as to who will collect from which section of assessees and what kind of norms will allow dual control to exist without the assessees getting harassed.
Okay.
So
And
that's what we are trying to discuss.
Does this
more.
also mean that the compensation law will have to be tabled again at the
No.
GST Council if the
No, all laws.
compensation amount
See.
is
No, GST Council is not going to be a temporary body. You're going to have this as a constitutional body which will have a say on indirect taxation in this country. So to that extent, yeah, they will need to meet often and take a look at these things. But there's no need for the GST Council to ask a question whether the states will get compensated. Because states have to be compensated. We've defined the revenue, we've defined the growth rate, 14% growth rate have been defined. All elements have been defined as far as that is concerned. So there won't be a surprise. Centre could spring on the states saying that, look, this time the cess has been less, so we'll pay you less. There's no possibility of that kind.
okay. And how hopeful are you of the April 1 deadline?
Depends on how things go tomorrow. Depends on centre's keenness on it. It's completely up to the centre at this point in time to see the reality that almost all the states are asking for a certain kind of a horizontal cross-empowerment. 1.5 crores is what we are crystallizing on. And I hope that tomorrow this issue, there is a breakthrough. If there is a breakthrough in this issue, rest is really details. The legal vetting and stuff like that has to happen. Yeah, but there are certain things which have been consuming the time of the GST Council. Like today, there have been a huge discussion on the definition of state, whether states will, the state definition will include, for instance, the 12-kilometer space between the coast and the ocean. Okay, questions of that kind have been really SECs, whether that will be part of the state. How do you define SECs? Lots of these nitty-gritties are getting worked out, but tomorrow I hope that we could see a path forward.